Hey everyone, it's Michael Kikle. I hope you're doing well today, and I have a review here for Absolute Superman Volume 1, Last Days of Krypton. Now, I read Absolute Batman Volume 1, and I reviewed it, I think, about a week ago, and then sometime this last week, like Monday, Tuesday, whatever, this came out, and I wanted to read it, because it sounded kind of cool, it looked kind of cool. I think there's a lot of cool ideas you could do with this Absolute line, where you're like, reversing things that are popular things with mythology and superheroes themselves. But I got my complaints about this one. I don't think I'm going to check out the Wonder Woman one because I don't know enough about her to really appreciate the change-ups. But I knew enough about Batman and Superman to do this stuff. And I gotta tell you, I'm a really hit or miss fan with Jason Aaron, who's writing this, who I was excited to find out was writing it because I was hoping he'd do something cool here. And I gotta tell you, in this first, 6 issues that Volume 1 has, man, I don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards bad. The art is amazing in here. The art steals the show. Every time you're looking at a panel, dude, you can see the passion and the wonder put into it, man. These two artists that are working on here, who I cannot pronounce their names to save my life, forgive me, they're fantastic. They're fantastic. They're the best part of the book, if I haven't said it already. But Jason Aaron is kind of all over the place, to be honest with you. Majority of this book are flashbacks to Krypton, and there's a reason for that, and I think he's going to do something with it. But for a first volume of a trade, of an ongoing that's currently happening, I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about this. I'm kind of put off with it, but I am going to at least give it a volume 2 to kind of see and give Aaron a chance to really develop and have a full, year-long story to work on. Because I gotta know. I gotta know what's gonna happen with what's revealed by the end of this book. That was kind of obvious and I suspected it, but then it was revealed. I guess the place to start with is the present day stuff. There's a lot of flashback stuff to Krypton. There's a reason for that. But the modern day setting is on Earth, and I'm assuming from what I'm doing, if the math is correct in my brain, I think Superman's about 18 years old. He just came to Earth for the last 5 years, but he's been kind of hiding like a myth, kind of like how Batman does in Gotham. Some people know he exists, some people don't. A lot of the criminals aren't sure. Henchmen definitely aren't sure. That's kind of how Superman is here. But a lot of the Absolute line was maintaining this idea of all of our heroes, Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, all these heroes, maintaining their general persona that we always knew and loved them for. For example, Superman is supposed to be very hopeful, and he's not at all in here. Maybe in Volume 2, I think they could do a lot more with that, but in this book, he just seems really, arrogant and kind of pessimistic and bittersweet because of the things we find out that happen on Krypton, which are very predictable anyway. But yeah, that version of Superman, I know people say that Zack Snyder's Henry Cavill Superman is like that. Not really compared like this. This is really, to me, the wrong way to do Superman. But again, this is the first volume that I'm reviewing here. So maybe it changes up. I'm going to give it one more trade just to see. But for now, I don't know. In modern day, the Earth has a company taking care of it that was also taking care of Krypton back in the day. That's kind of a government police, internationally, called Lazarus Corps, and that probably gives away who the villain is going to be here. To let you know, the present day stuff doesn't really have a big bad yet. It's kind of revealed by the end of the book who's behind all this stuff with Lazarus Corp, but not really. It's not heavily focused upon here. Most of this book is focused on Superman's origin, how he got to Earth, what happened on Krypton, and I'll get to that in a moment. But the current day Earth that he's on, they're guarded by Lazarus Corp, who use a bunch of guys trained up to be peacemakers. And I feel like it's only here because of the James Gunn terrible-ass show. So that's a thing. Lois Lane is also kind of like a military person. Very combat-y, whatever, not just a regular old journalist. She's so awful. I can't stand her. She's a terrible character in here. They're doing the typical, maybe she'll figure out that she's on the wrong side type of thing, but not obviously so. Superman doesn't really have a friendship with her or with like Jimmy Olsen or anybody in here. It's just kind of Superman hiding around and doing his own thing and traveling around to go help different people who are having the Earth divided up because of Lazarus Core, just like how Krypton was, of elites versus the poor. There is no middle class. You're either in poverty and suffering, or you're an elite with all the money and all the everything, essentially. That's what they're doing here on the Earth. And Superman's trying to help out people on the Earth by taking care of them, doing their jobs for them, whatever, but in secret, right? Now, going back to Krypton, I talked about all these things with Lazarus Corp and whatever happening on Krypton. That's pretty much the entire flashback here. The difference is that Superman is like somewhere, and I can't really tell, between the ages of 8 and 12 years old, you know? He's a boy. He's a grown-up boy by that point. He's not a teenager yet, at least I don't think. And essentially, he's just kind of, you know, doing boy things. He's like hanging out with his parents, being homeschooled or whatever. He has a dog, Crypto. His parents used to be part of the upper echelon elites in society that Lazarus Corp had kind of divided that whole planet up into, but they got kicked out pretty young because of their opinions on how the scientists in that elite were wrong about some stuff. And Krypton is very focused on science anyway, so if you disagree with them, they boot you out. It's kind of like the modern day college system, you know what I mean? But it's more severe because then you're stuck in poverty, you have to do mining jobs and whatever. And that's essentially what Superman grows up with. Cal grows up with his parents being like that, but also being a lot smarter than most people. Now, Krypton's very red, like red dirt and red mountains and stuff. It's really pretty. I really enjoy that stuff. I like a lot of the callbacks to the usual Superman stuff we do. And it's interesting having him at first be more of like almost preteen age or right at it, rather than being a baby and sent to Earth. I kind of like that, but then they don't really do a ton with it. It's just the idea that he is able to actually firsthand have experience witnessing these events, that then later on he can be bittersweet with and pessimistic towards the Earth as a grown adult, as Superman when he finally shows up there, and how he doesn't think he can actually save the Earth and the human race because of how they act, the things they do, which gets me into my next point. As Krypton begins to fall apart, because all of that flashback stuff is pretty much wrapped up by the end of this volume, which thank God for that. I think Volume 2 will suffer so much less than Volume 1 did if we don't have to deal with all that nonsense. Because it's so much, man. It's so boring and it's so much. Most of this volume is the flashback of Krypton. Again, something could be done with those things, like Superman's reflection on what he saw in Krypton, having a first-hand experience. But this is such a wine box, environmental disaster story. It's very political. It just goes on and on about the environment and how Krypton's elite didn't want to actually prepare the poverty-stricken and whatever to, be able to get away from Krypton, or like how the Earth is doing the same thing. And dude, it is so fucking lame. I'm so bored with this shit. Stop doing this and everything. Again, Aaron is not an idiot. He's very hit or miss for me. I'm hoping he does something with this, but this is something I had not heard people whine about with it, but it deserves it because it's all over the book, and it's so boring for it. And again, it's a little bit too talky for me anyway. There's not enough action in here. It is a setup for what could be very actiony, but it is what it is. Now, in the Earth modern setting thing, a lot of people don't even write their own reports for stuff. Like, for example, Lois is kind of a military person, just sits down on a computer screen and talks to the Brainiac algorithm. And Brainiac is actually some kind of person over in like a room somewhere. You only get to see him from behind in this volume, as far as I remember. But people don't get to write their own reports, and if you try to do it, like how Lois wants to kind of start doing it now, because she prefers how she words things versus how Brainiac does, where he kind of tries to give excuses for like war and stuff by wording things a ridiculous way that of events that didn't happen a certain way. Kind of takes your words out of context, if you will. Lois is kind of getting more and more in the headspace of realizing how jacked up things are. And all of these things are very predictable. I already talked about that part of it. But it shows the weaknesses of Aaron as a writer. The predictability is a big issue with him here, and I don't understand why his version on Star Wars was so unpredictable, how he would do things, the ideas he had. Maybe he's a bigger Star Wars fan than something like Superman, I don't know. But this book doesn't work for me most of the time, and I really hope that Volume 2 doesn't improve after all this flashback stuff is out of the way. I don't know, man. I don't think I would continue it, to be honest with you, because it's so dull. But again, the artwork is fantastic. I guess I'll go into talking about Superman a little bit. Because there's not a whole lot of eventfulness here, I really, really hoped that Superman would be a lot cooler than he is. He's kind of lame too, to be honest with you. That's just my opinion. Maybe you like that, maybe you don't agree with that. But Superman has like a metal suit that I don't really want to explain too much. Pretty sure it's metal by what they explain some of the Krypton flashback stuff as. But it kind of looks like the Lex Luthor metal costume thing that we had from New 52 in the beginning of Rebirth and stuff. I don't hate that look of the costume. The problem comes in for me for the cape, right? And Superman has like the badass long hair and stuff, but the cape is the issue here. This suit, because of something explained in the book, it has an AI system called Sol, S-O-L, and Superman talks to this thing, right? And it's kind of his best friend. He doesn't have Krypto here. He doesn't have his parents here. All that. The stuff they do with Ma and Pa Kent, who are not really in here much, when they pop up in here, what Aaron does with them is fantastic. I want you to know that up front. I loved that part of it. It sounds like it's raining outside. Sorry, it's really throwing me off, man. I can't tell. I don't see anything out the window over across the room, but so anyway, Superman's cape is actually, like, it's not a cape. It's not physically there. It's actually more like dust, and sometimes I think it's a hologram, but most of the time I don't think it is. I can't really figure out the logistics of that. It's not super explained here, but I think it has something to do, if I remember correctly, with the dirt or soil or whatever that's red and sparkly from Krypton that Superman gathers up on, like, his last day of being there. And like, if he has all of his powers. I'm not saying like the costume has the powers for him. Superman can fly. The Earth, the yellow sun energizes him and stuff when he comes here. All of that stuff is our usual thing, but his costume doesn't have a cape. It does, but it doesn't really count. It's like, if he flies, it's like, sometimes I think it was retracted, but a lot of the time it's just kind of swooping around him, like, because it's not really anything. Right? But like, if he goes and does something, it leaves a trail. Like, it leaves little red sparkles and shit. I don't like that. I'm sorry, I don't. There's like a final page in the book where it seems to be like maybe it's not just a bunch of fucking dust following Superman around from his shoulders. And I hope that's the case. I hope it actually just becomes a real, like, physical entity of some sort. I think the idea of it being a piece of Krypton and not just a baby blanket is kind of nice. I kind of dig that. But I don't know if I like what I saw here of that, so I hope it's improved. I believe that Aaron could improve that and maybe do something with it, because again, this is not a graphic novel. This is an ongoing, right? So I'm trying to give it all these excuses to hope it gets better, but there's a big chance that it might not. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I wish there was more, conflict here in the sense of, like, Superman versus who the big bad is revealed to be. I'm super excited to see what we do with Brainiac if we ever get to that at some point. And again, the art is beautiful. I've said that a bunch of times, because it is. It's just the story going back and forth all of the time, like 6 years difference, is just not... It just doesn't land for me. I'm sorry. And it's not because it's jumping back and forth. It's just that both stories are so lame on either end of that spectrum. And the characters surrounding them are so lame. Superman's parents don't interest me that much. The Society of Krypton's interesting to a degree until it becomes SJW whininess. But then coming to present day on Earth, it's like, I don't know, the surrounding characters there aren't that cool. Like Lois Lane being so boring and dull. There's just a lot of improvement to be needed. You know what I mean? That's really the big issue here for me. And I hope that Aaron will correct that soon. I hope by the end of Volume 2 it's really corrected. I think Volume 2, because of what's teased at the end here, I think it's going to be a big improvement. I hope so anyway. I'm glad that Batman was as solid as it was from reading that first volume of that. But I'm really disappointed with this one, to be honest with you. So anyway, that's kind of the big issue in general with ongoings versus graphic novels that are standalone and complete, like a Watchmen or a Doomsday Clock or The Crow. These ongoing things, you get these boring 6-month periods of comics that just don't interest me. And that's what happens with stuff like this. So, I don't know, man. I'm kind of put off by it, but it is what it is. If you guys want me to continue after Volume 2, let me know at that point. But it's going to be a little bit till Volume 2 comes out anyway, so I'll get there when I get there. What did you think about Absolute Superman? What do you think about the Absolute line so far? What's your favorite? I'd love to hear all that down below, too. Thank you all for watching, guys. God bless you all. Catch you later, and goodbye.